As I'm recording this video, we're in like peak season of all these reveals for Reign of Jafar, and if I told you I wasn't hyped for the next set, I guess I'd be lying. Get it? Because I'm a lion in shot. I put this all together for this one stupid gag. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another video. I'm TheXploder, and I'm obviously crap at making these jokes. That's the point. If you actually laugh about this, let me know in the comments. I'm laughing myself. Today we get to dive into version 3 of Get Shifty, but not just my version of Get Shifty. There's also going to be a version made by another buddy of mine who I do play with over at my local. So you're going to be getting 2 deck lists in one video featuring the same theory, but built in 2 very distinct different ways. But I highly recommend trying both out. Let's dive into my list first. So first things first, here's my list. Get Shifty version 3. If you tried version 1, you'd know it's a little bit gimmicky here or there, but it was still fun. Version 2 was just so bad, I just could not recommend it, but needed to highlight it so you don't make the same mistakes I did. Version 3 is interesting, and I find that version 3 might be the best version of the deck if you want to take it this way, and this is the more discard route of the deck. So let's dive straight in. First things first, we have gone straight in with the Diablo tech. That's 4 copies of the Maleficent Spy Diablo, and also 4 copies of the Diablo Devoted Herald. That's why the budget is so high. But this is kind of essential. Not just is it a Floodborn, not just is it shift targeting, but it's also very good card draw. So what can I say? It's basically the most reliable version of card draw that Emerald has, which is also kind of annoying because when Fabled comes in, Diablo gets rotated out, and if by then we don't have decent card draw potential for Emerald, it's going to be very hard to play an Emerald deck outside of relying on Diablos, just saying. On top of that, our other 1-drop is Basil, Practice Detective, now up to 4, and we're using him in conjunction with Basil, Disguise Detective. That is a shift 4, 2 lore, a 4/5, and during your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, you can pay 1 to have chosen opponent choose and discard a card. It's discard tech coupled up with Floodborns. Real nice. Because we're also running quite a few different Floodborns, we've got 2 copies of Morph just to help us on our 2-drops, as well as to give us a couple more generic targets for our Floodborns in general. 4 copies of Tipo to help us with our initial ramping very early on. 3 copies of Hero Hamada, where if you do a Floodborn shift on top of him, you get to draw a card. 4 copies of Muses. This is definitely our more control-y part of the deck, hence why we're also running 14 songs with this. We're also upped the Baymaxes to 4, so we're now running 4 copies of the Baymax Giant Robot, which are the universal shift 4, so he can shift on anybody. Doesn't even have to be Morph, doesn't have to be Hero, it can literally be anyone, and as soon as he shifts on top of them, remove all the damage off of those characters, which can be very, very good. And last but not least, 4 copies of the Hero Hamada Armor Designer, which is the main reason why we built the deck in the first place, but obviously has the effect of if our Floodborn characters have a card underneath them, they gain Evasive and Ward, which can help out Diablo, giving him Ward because he already has Evasive, help out Basil, putting him as Evasive and Ward and quest for 2, then also with Baymax being able to quest for 2 with Evasive and Ward is awesome, and Hero being able to quest for 3 with Evasive and Ward is pretty darn dope. With those in mind, we're also running 6 actions in the deck, 4 copies of Sail the Azurite Sea, its additional card draw as well as additional ramping to help us get to our top stage shifting as fast as we can, and 2 copies of Bend to My Will. This is a discard tech of a deck, and of course we're running 2 copies of Bend to My Will in order to make our opponents discard their entire hand, and then we can micromanage discards from there using things like Basil. Then we move on to the 14 songs of the deck, which are going to be in conjunction with the Muses to help control things down onto the board. We are running things like Heffalumps and Woozles to stop things from questing and to give us a little bit of card draw. 4 copies of You're Welcome. We can bounce back our own stuff if we're struggling to draw cards, or we could shuffle something back that our opponent has, give them 2 cards and then discard them afterwards. We're also running 4 copies of How Far I'll Go, not just as a help us with ramp, But if we're able to trigger Basil twice, we can discard 2 cards, and all is found. Not just does this also help us with ramp, but because we don't exactly have a lot of recycle tech, it makes use of our discard pile to then put it into our inkwell, and again, triggering Basil so we can discard another card from our opponent's hand. Last but not least, we're also running 3 items in the deck, those 3 being 3 copies of Sapphire Coil, because whenever we're inking, we can lower our opponent's attacks, making it easier for us to bop into them if we need to bop into them, but mostly in order to trigger the muses so that we can lower them to 2 attack or less, bounce them back to the hand, then trigger Basil, discard them from the hand, or rely on Bend to My Will to do our discarding as well. This is a pretty fun deck. It doesn't have a lot of discard tech behind it, so we don't have Hypnotize, we don't have anything like the 2-drop Flynn Rider, or anything too crazy like that. But as tech on its own to help us get to our main Floodborn characters, to help us make sure that our Floodborn characters then have evasive and ward, and to also make it so we can micromanage parts of the board and parts of our opponent's hand, it's a very nice control, more tempo-like deck, which I quite enjoy and I highly recommend if you want to try my build. But we don't just have my build, we also have my mate's build, aka Jordan, which we'll be checking out now. And here's Jordan's list. It's important to note at this point that both of these lists will be available down below in the description and should also be available on my Discord server. If they are not up on the Discord server, please remind me. I'm a dum-dum and I normally forget half the time. But having a look at Jordan's version, you can tell there's a big difference. Let's have a look at his. 42 characters, he's running 4 copies of the 1-drop Clarabelle, coupled up with 4 copies of the big Clarabelle, which is going to be a big hand with drawing cards. Still keeping with the Diablo tech, with the 1-drop Diablo and the Shift Diablo as well. No, going with 4 copies of Morph in order to help with all the different shift targets, and the main play is to also play 3 copies of Yokai, the intellectual schemer that makes it 1 less for your other characters to shift, which is very good, and this affects everything. Doesn't necessarily affect Diablo because his shift cost is different than just paying ink, but it does affect the others such as Baymax. So now that means Baymax is a universal shift 3, which is extremely good if you need to just slap it onto anyone that you have on board. Clarabelle becomes a shift 4, and Hero himself also becomes a shift 4. Still running 4 copies of Tipo for ramping, still running Hero Hamada, but running him a 4 instead of 3. Also running 3 copies of Baymax Upgraded Robot, which is for 3/5 with support, and when you play this character, you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, and you may reveal a Floodborn character and put it into your hand, and put the rest of the bottom of the deck in any order. This is effectively here to help you get out your Yokais, your heroes, or your shift heroes to make sure that you can get your tech out when you're able to. And then we've already covered it. We've got 4 Baymaxes, 4 Clarabelles, 4 heroes, the standard stuff. The action's pretty simple as well. We've got 4 copies of Salvia Azurite Sea, similar to me, but 2 copies of Ink Geyser. And playing against this deck, because we literally had a mirror match against each other, it was pretty darn crazy to have Ink Geyser being used, because effectively he would use it in a way where you would use this on curve. So even if it's turn 3, about to go into turn 4, maybe even turn 5 when you know the big shift targets or the bigger plays are going to come down, regardless of what Jordan had on his board, it was Ink Geyser, draw some cards, reset the board. After resetting the board, next turn, on your turn, you then have curve opportunities into Baymax, into a shift 4. Hell, you can even do Yokai play into Baymax shift 3. The Ink Geyser actually worked out a lot. There's only 2 copies of it because you don't want to rely on it all the time, but if you're able to get it out early to screw over your opponent, it's actually pretty cool. And song-wise, we also have some different song choices. We have 2 copies of Mother Knows Best to help us with bouncing because Jordan's not running anything to do with muses. And we're also running 4 copies of We Don't Talk About Bruno, where we can return a character back to the hand and then give our opponent a chance to discard a card at random. And of course, if that's the only card we have in their hand, bye-bye, there you go. And 2 copies of Let It Go, which immediately takes any of the things they have on their board and shoves it into the inkwell. Bye-bye. You will notice this does not run Bend to My Will, but the focus on this deck is not necessarily going for discarding. The focus on this deck is more so focused on getting out your big shift characters. Be that Diablo's not more so the big shift character here. We're mostly looking at getting out our Baymaxes, our Clarabelles, and our heroes in order to quest for big lore and effectively come out with big bodies that you either can't deal with because they're just big bodies, or you can't deal with because they have evasive and ward on them, which is pretty darn scary, making a very interesting deck with a very cool tech, which is very similar to how I built mine, but of course, mine's more so focused on tempo and discarding, while this one is more so focused on tempo and big Floodborns that you just can't deal with. Have a look at both of the lists and try them both out. And that's what we got. I wanted to make sure that I get these lists out before Reign of Jafar does come out. So bear in mind, these deck lists are made before Reign of Jafar, so it will not feature any set 8 cards. Remember that. But what do you think? Which deck do you prefer out of mine and Jordan's? And let me know your thoughts on the decks in general down in the comment section below. While you're down there, check out the description for all my social links if you so wish, and also consider subscribing, liking the video, sharing with your buddies, and letting them know that they can get shifty as well. Alright! And with all that being shown, I'm going to be seeing you guys on the next Lorcana video, and until then, stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly, stay explosive. I'll be seeing you guys next time. Now, I knew the opening joke in this one was a little bit hilarious, but I'm actually struggling with what to do now for a closing joke. I'm only looking back there because this time I'm not lying, okay?